Hello Exiles, this is BEG with another PoE2 video. Today's video is a guide to my cast on crit Ice Strike Invoker. This is a late game build. If you want builds for the campaign or early mapping, I'll link my monk playlist in the description, which has videos that can help through earlier parts of progression. This version of the build is something you can respec into later, around level 90 and with a minimum investment of 5 to 10 divines to spend on gearing. There have been major changes to the build since I've been able to get a hold of Path of Building for PoE2 to optimize things, so I'll have a POB and max roll link in the description as well. Without further ado, let's get into the required gearing for this build. The first and most important piece of gear you should be getting as an invoker is the body armor. This will allow you to use the invoker's best ascendancy notable, Lead Me Through Grace, to grant spirit without having to get it on any gear. I think Evasion Energy Shield Hybrid Armor is the way to go for this. The build needs 260 spirit to function at full power, so the stats you'll be looking for are around 1240 evasion and 470 energy shield. This should put you at 261 spirit, enough to fit in everything needed for the build. Nice suffixes to look for as a bonus are elemental resistances, attributes, or stun threshold. The next most important piece of gear will be the quarterstaff. Since we are relying on crit so heavily, a high crit chance is important. I personally would search for at least 13. DPS is going to be the next thing you're looking for, the higher the better. You can set your budget on the trade site and click the DPS on an item in the search results to sort by high DPS. Lastly, critical damage bonus is going to elevate the build as well. You can find reasonably high DPS quarterstaves with high crit and crit damage bonus for reasonable prices at the moment, but prices may vary based on the popularity of the build and the market. One thing to note is the type of damage barely matters compared to the raw damage, as the build likes to do all types of damage anyway, but if you don't have Hand of Wisdom in action, you will want to prioritize lightning damage so that you can shock reliably. You can also add attack speed or melee gem levels if you can swing it, although a quarterstaff with crit stats, high DPS, and either attack speed or melee gem levels will probably be extremely expensive. Now that we have the most important pieces in play, let's look at the other gear. The gloves should be Hand of Wisdom in action as soon as you can manage it. Looking for a corrupted version with elevated damage and or attack speed would be the best, but any pair will add a ton of DPS to the build. Ingenuity is the best belt for nearly any build at the moment. The higher the bonuses from rings, the better, but even a low roll one to start out with will be better than pretty much any other rare belt. Once you have an Ingenuity, you should be looking for good rings. The best stats are going to be resistances and flat damage rolls. These will be amplified by Ingenuity to take a ton of gearing pressure off other areas. Next, look for things like intelligence, dexterity, or all attributes, and then mana regeneration, evasion, rarity, or percent damage are also nice stats to have on top of all of these. Now let's talk about the rest of the gear. For boots, you'll want 35% movement speed. Other than that, try to fill resists and get some extra evasion or energy shield. Boots aren't super important, so don't break the bank for a cracked pair until you have the above gear sorted, and that also goes for the helmet and amulet. The helmet I like to use is also going to be an evasion energy shield hybrid, but if you take the Centrifuge mask notable, you can put in a pure energy shield helmet. I wouldn't recommend doing so unless it's at least 500 ES though, as you're probably going to get more value out of a hybrid prior to that. For suffixes, things like resists, attributes, and crit chance are nice to have on the helmet as well. The amulet is next. There are a lot of good stats on the amulet, but let's start with the anointment. You'll want to use your emotions to put Harmonic Generator on your amulet. This is going to be the best DPS notable, as it will bring your shock, more damage multiplier, from 20 to 28%, a 40% increase on a more multiplier, which is quite good. It also gives crit against shocked enemies and a significant amount as well, so the DPS is just going to be higher than other nodes in pretty much every case. When comparing it in PoB, this was giving me about 12% more damage overall, whereas other notables were giving me at most 8 to 9%. In terms of the actual stats on the amulet, we have evasion rating percent, max energy shield percent, flat energy shield, mana, attributes, melee gem levels, resists, and crit stats. There's a ton of great things you can get on your amulet, so it can kind of be used to fill out any holes in your build. Finally, we have charms and flasks. For flasks, just try to get high recovery flasks with charges gained per second, or the best flask you can manage with quality of course. For the charm, I simply pretty much always take a thawing charm for help against freezes. If you have other means to protect against freezes, change the charm to suit your needs. This is meant to be a flexible spot, and whatever is kind of stopping you, if you're getting stunned a lot, take a stun immune one, and if you have everything sorted, you can go ahead and take a rarity charm. Now I'll go over the skills, which have changed pretty significantly over time. POB has helped me find what I think is the most balanced setup for mapping and bossing, although this may change based on your gear level. Part of the reason for the change is that I found the Bell is actually doing a majority of the build's damage on single target, not Ice Strike. So I've invested more heavily on damage with the Bell and more with utility on Ice Strike. So the links: for Ice Strike, we are slotting Primal Armament, Close Combat, Martial Tempo, Rage, and Practiced Combo. Now that we're running Rage here, we no longer need Rage on hit on a jewel, which gives an extra damage roll for one of our jewels. Tempest Bell is next, being linked with Elemental Focus, Immolate, Concentrated Effect, Super Critical, and Overabundance. Overabundance will allow you to bell again slightly faster, as you will start building your combo right after dropping the bell. With practiced combo and enough attack speed, you'll actually probably have the best setup here, and you'll be able to back-to-back chain 7 million plus damage bell bursts over and over again. Since we want Ice Strike to be applying the elemental ailments, it makes more sense to get the extra damage from Ele Focus and Immolate here. Now, Tempest Bell is going to be doing a huge majority of the damage for single target, but Ice Strike is still more than enough for clearing. Charge Staff is linked with Culling Strike, Electrocute, Neural Overload, and Blind. You can add whatever you want as the last link. Per a viewer's suggestion, I'm currently running Ambush and it's pretty good. Maim would also be solid. Charge Staff, as we're not power charge stacking, is being used as pure utility. Ice Strike should have more than enough shocking power with Hand of Wisdom in action, so this will give you the opportunity to chain crowd control with freezes, stuns, and electrocutes. Next comes our AoE clear skills for smashing maps. First is Herald of Ice, linked with Lightning Infusion, Conduction, Innervate, Shock Siphon, and Cold Mastery. Then we have to pair it with Herald of Thunder, linked with Cold Infusion, Glaciation, Ice Bite, Magnified Effect, and Lightning Mastery. The way these two work together is that when the Herald of Ice shocks enemies, it will then set off the Herald of Thunder, which will then freeze enemies, and that is what these links are optimized to do, creating a chain reaction. This is a commonly used combo in the current meta of the game. After that, we're using Combat Frenzy to help generate power charges to keep our charge staff up. It's simply linked with Profusion, and no other links are necessary. Our defensive spirit skills are Wind Dancer, linked with Unbreakable and Maim. You can add whatever you'd like to the rest. I'm currently using Inevitable Crit and Ambush so that when it's broken, I'll get a guaranteed crit and kill whatever attacked me, setting off my Herald chains as well, killing other nearby enemies. And we also use Ghost Dance with Fast Forward, Clarity, and Precision. Lastly, and possibly most importantly, as this will account for a significant amount of DPS, is the Cast on Crit setup. I did a video on this recently, and with this setup you won't drain your mana nearly as quickly as you previously would with Cast on Crit. If you want the details, it will also be in the Monk playlist in the description. Cast on Crit is linked with Eye of Winter, Sniper's Mark, Frost Bomb, and Inspiration. In the last slot, I'm just using Deceleration to keep the Eye of Winters on enemies longer to do a bit more damage and keep the critical weakness debuff going, but honestly it isn't doing too much, and if you want to use something different in this slot, you definitely can. It is very flexible, or you simply don't have to perfect Jewelers your Cast on Crit. For the skill tree, you're aiming to get crit stats, evasion energy shield hybrid nodes, damage, and freeze buildup. You'll also want to pick up chaos inoculation and eternal youth. Generally, if you can swing it, you'll want to go the most intelligence you can get, as that'll boost the damage of Hand of Wisdom in action, and of course you'll need some dexterity as well. The ascendancies I'm taking are Lead Me Through Grace and Protect Me From Harm, I Am the Blizzard, and Sunder My Enemies. You can pause the video and look at my tree if you'd like, or there will be a Path of Building and max roll link in the description to follow more directly. I'm currently just using rare jewels, but unique jewels can certainly elevate this build much further. For the rare jewels, you'll want to use your 2 prefixes to be either damage stats, such as quarterstaff damage, elemental damage, or attack damage, energy shield percent, or evasion percent. And for your suffixes, you'll want crit stats, particularly crit damage bonus, and or shock magnitude or ailment magnitude to bring your shocks up a little bit more and get that extra bit of damage. For the Act 3 buff, I took Mono Regen from the first one in normal difficulty, and then Chaos Resist in cruel difficulty. Since I made this character as my starter, and we can't currently change those buffs, I'm stuck with the Chaos Resist, but if given the chance, I would get the attributes for the second cruel buff instead. And that is pretty much going to cover everything in the build. I hope you enjoy. This build has been able to take on all content quite easily, and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. It can scale pretty much infinitely with more currency invested, so if you want to take this even further, feel free to do so. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time. Bye!